Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. Sophia was the prettiest girl in our English class and one of the most outgoing girls in the entire university. Every time I go to class, I can't even listen to what the professor is saying, and all my attention is unconsciously focused on Sophia. The time and place of our future wedding had long been set in my mind. We'll get married the week after college at the picturesque Curtis Tree Gardens in Cheltenham, and then make our home in vibrant Chestnut Hill. I've even come up with names for our next two children. Now, the only thing I need to do is get up the courage to take the initiative to talk to her and ask her out. This is our first week of freshman week at Philadelphia University. One day after class, I quietly followed Sophia to the school cafeteria. She sat alone in the corner, looking preoccupied. I noticed three different guys, all handsome and sunny athletic boys, taking turns sitting next to her trying to strike up a conversation. But strangely enough, everyone left shaking their heads after only a few minutes of conversation. Sophia looks as if she's about to burst into tears at any moment. To be honest, I'm neither handsome nor good at sports, but I consider myself to have some sense of humor. Usually, this self-evaluation is what I use to reassure myself when a beautiful date politely tells me to stay out of touch. If I were more mature, more experienced, or smarter, I might have gotten the hint and lowered my expectations in due time. Gathering my courage, I walked over to Sophia's table and sat down. I could feel her trying desperately to hold back tears. I was thinking that maybe we could name our two future kids Josh and Adam, but if you don't like those names, we can still talk about it. I ventured. The sudden statement clearly caught her off guard, and she looked at me in confusion. "Who are you?" There was a hint of displeasure in her tone. "Oh, did I not make myself clear enough?" I said with mock relief, "Apparently, I'm your future husband." Surprisingly, she smiled. It was the first time I had ever seen her smile, and I felt my heart skip a beat. I gathered my courage and looked deep into her beautiful brown eyes. "So, why do you think you married me?" she asked with a few joking tones. "Because I can make you laugh, and I feel like I understand you." I said seriously, "I see a lot of pain and hurt in your beautiful eyes. Let's find a quiet place to talk about it, okay?" Despite some hesitation, she followed me to a secluded corner of the restaurant. We stood behind a pillar, away from the sight of others. "I really want to see you smile and cheer you up, but I may not be able to do that until you release the pain in your heart." I whispered, "You're safe here, so feel free to cry if you want to." I gently took her hand in mine, as if the gesture opened the floodgates of her emotions. Tears began to well up from her eyes. At first she cried softly, then more and more loudly. "Cry out all the pain." I whispered again in a soft, comforting voice, letting go of her hand and giving her a warm hug. She hugged me tightly, like she was holding on to the only thing in her life. "My father died 2 weeks ago," she finally said. "You must miss him a lot?" I asked softly. "Yes, but the irony is that I barely know him," she replied in a low voice, tears coming to her eyes once again. "I've been living in Philadelphia for the past 5 years while he stayed in Venezuela. I love him and I miss him, but just shortly before he got sick, I was angry and told him that I hated him for abandoning us and not coming to Philadelphia to be with his family. Now I feel so guilty." She continued to cry as I summoned all the courage in my body and gently kissed her on the lips. To my surprise, she kissed me back. "Maybe we can name our first child Josh, in honor of my father," she said softly, then suddenly realized something. "By the way, I still don't know what your name is." I was momentarily stumped. It was the first time in my life that I'd been asked that question but didn't know how to answer. "My name is Lucas," I finally said. "So does this mean we're engaged?" She nodded, the tears on her face gradually being replaced by a smile of joy. She quickly hesitated again, though. "Actually, we're not really engaged. We're just dating, maybe sort of settling into a relationship. We'll take it slow and see what happens." Time flew by, and we graduated with flying colors, both with accounting degrees. Maybe our lives don't seem so exciting, but I think we're happy. For the next 20 years or so, We worked together, lived together, and raised our children hand in hand. We have a great understanding and can often say what the other wants to say, and will even feed each other dessert. We each took care of different clients and gradually built up an accounting firm. Starting with one initial client, they were so pleased with our service that they recommended us to their peers. You may be thinking, is there a more boring job than accounting? But honestly, this job has provided us with a pretty good life. Our lives may seem mundane, but they are full of meaning for us. Sophia and I are in this small accounting firm that specializes in serving a variety of financial needs. To be honest, this job really doesn't sound very exciting, but it's the kind of stability and down-to-earth work that allows us to take one step at a time to achieve our goals in life. We have adopted a prudent business strategy. We don't want to be dependent on one or two big clients because if they leave, our firm could be at risk of bankruptcy. Instead, we carefully cultivate about 20 smaller clients. That way, even if we lose any of them, it won't affect us too much. This strategy may not be ambitious enough, but it has given us a sense of security and a steady income. In all the years we've lived together, we've only had one really serious argument. No, argument is an understatement. It was more of a reckless, tit-for-tat, intense conflict. It all started when a potential client named Mr. Brown approached Sophia for help with false accounting to avoid taxes. In return, he promises to give Sophia a large sum of money. To my shock and dismay, Sophia seemed interested in the offer. I immediately voiced my strong objections and categorically refused to take on this client. Sophia argues that even if Mr. Brown is caught, we won't go to jail. But I don't care about that at all. First of all, I am convinced that once the matter is exposed, this so-called client will certainly not hesitate to push us out as scapegoats, claiming that he is innocent and we are the culprits. But I didn't even get a chance to voice that argument because our argument quickly escalated. We have always been known for our honesty and reliability, a reputation we have worked hard to build over the years. I would never put it in jeopardy for a moment's gain. Philadelphia is a small place when all is said and done, and I could make a long list of names of accountants who have been caught with fraudulent accounts and never been able to get a foothold in the profession again. I would never want to risk being on that list. Sophia, however, seems blinded by the immediate benefits and refuses to budge. She didn't even talk to me for days, which was unprecedented in our married life. Faced with this situation, I decided to take the initiative. I called that potential client directly and told him in no uncertain terms that if he hired my wife to do false accounting, I would not hesitate to report him to the IRS. This toughness finally brought the farce to a close. In retrospect, this conflict made me realize that even the closest of partners can disagree on values. It also taught me the importance of taking a stand on principle. Although the argument was draining at the time, it ultimately strengthened our relationship as we learned how to communicate and compromise in the face of major disagreements. We waited many years before deciding to have children until we could afford to buy a house and still have some money in the bank. Eventually, we moved into a big house in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, with a yard that was too big for me to maintain. Now we have 3 kids in elementary school and 1 in high school. I am incredibly proud to be a father. I love to cook for my kids, take them to school, and take them to the playground or movie theater. I even covered the laundry. In our family, I take more of a child-centered role while Sophia is more focused on work. We all often need to work late. But lately, I've noticed that Sophia seems to be working late every night. I checked her online schedule and realized that these late-night meetings were not with clients. This discovery sent a wave of unease through me, but I wasn't sure how to deal with this yet. I began to wonder if our marriage was facing a turning point that neither of us was ready for. Despite the fact that we've spent more than 20 years together, at this moment, I feel like we're farther apart than ever before. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew that no matter what happened, I had to make the right decision for the sake of our children and for the sake of everything we had built together. As each day passed, the sense of unease in my mind grew stronger. Sophia's late nights had become the norm, and the distance between us seemed to be growing without us realizing it. I tried to convince myself that it was just a result of a busy work schedule, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Finally, on a normal evening, I made up my mind to find out. I borrowed my father's car, and parked it near Sophia's last scheduled meeting of the day. As she drove off, I followed carefully, keeping a safe distance. Sophia's car eventually pulls up in front of a luxury home in Philadelphia's Society Hill. I held my breath as I watched her get out of the car and then be greeted by a silver-haired man. Even in the dim streetlight, I could see them embracing and kissing. At that moment, I felt as if my heart had been gripped hard. How I wish this was just a nightmare and I could wake up and realize that nothing happened. But the reality was harsh and I witnessed my wife's betrayal. I wanted to rush forward and question them, but reason told me that would only make things worse. I silently snapped a few pictures, and although I couldn't see the man's face in the dark, it was enough to prove Sophia's infidelity. On the drive home, my mind was filled with chaotic thoughts. The 20 years we've spent together, our children, the business we've built together, all of it is so fragile in this moment. I don't know how to face this harsh reality. When Sophia came home late at night, I noticed her hair was wet. Apparently, she took a shower at her lover's house. The detail sent a wave of nausea through me, but I forced myself to remain calm. I didn't question her on the spot because I needed time to think and formulate a plan. Over the next few days, I began to carefully consider my options. Immediate divorce was my first reaction, but as an accountant I had to consider the financial implications. Our children, our house, our careers, all of these need to be carefully considered. I started taking some precautions. I took all the money out of the account and put it into a trust fund for the kids' college education. I changed my life insurance beneficiary and my will twice. I continued to track Sophia's movements to her lover's house to gather more evidence. Meanwhile, our conjugal life, while never particularly warm, has now cooled to a freezing point. My biggest concern is New Jersey's lifetime alimony laws. The idea that I might have to pay alimony even if Sophia was living with her boyfriend struck me as very unfair. It was at this point that I came up with a plan. I convinced Sophia that we should sell our house in New Jersey and move back to Philadelphia. My reasoning was that we could be closer to our clients and the kids would have more freedom in the city center. What I didn't say, of course, was that it would also allow her to be closer to her lover. To my surprise, Sophia immediately agreed to the proposal. The kids were reluctant to leave their friends, but as parents we made the final decision. We sold our house in New Jersey and bought a bigger, more expensive house in downtown Philadelphia. The schools here are great, and the kids can walk to nearby stores and movie theaters. After the move, we had very little net worth in the new house to lose in the divorce. I know it sounds cold, but after finding out about my wife's betrayal, I had to look out for myself and my children's future. We are all busy as the tax filing deadline approaches. I sat back and waited for the other boot to hit the ground, for the inevitable confrontation. After such a betrayal, I knew our marriage was beyond repair, but I needed to choose the right time to end it all. Every day, when I look at Sophia, I wonder where the woman I once loved is gone. Everything we built together now seems to be one big lie. But even in the midst of such pain, I tried to keep my sanity and prepare for the coming storm. Mid-April is a marathon for us accountants every year. After almost 2 months of working like crazy preparing tax returns for all of our clients, Sophia and I usually sit down and discuss where to go for a long weekend to relax. This year is no exception, but there is a tension in the air that we all know in our hearts but don't want to admit. "Lucas," Sophia spoke up, "I want to go on vacation to an indoor pool in Atlantic City." I almost never argue with Sophia over such trivial matters. "Okay, let's go to Atlantic City then," I said, all the while knowing in my heart what was going to happen next. "Lucas, we need to talk." Sophia's expression suddenly becomes very serious and I feel a pang of unease. Even though I had expected it, I felt a palpitation when I was actually confronted with the moment. "You mean you're going to Atlantic City alone while I stay home and take care of the kids?" I tried to hide my inner fear with a light-hearted tone. Sophia paused for a moment, scrutinizing my reaction. "I need some alone time. Marrying you straight from my mother's apartment, I've never really been alone, even for a week." I didn't come across as considerate or understanding. I knew the moment of head-to-head confrontation had finally arrived. "Who is he? Don't lie to me." We argued back and forth for a while. Sophia kept denying that there was anyone else, and finally I got her to tell the truth. I've met someone else and I want to spend a week with him and think about my life. She finally admitted. Are you trying to take him for a test drive and then decide if you want to divorce me? I said sarcastically. Sophia didn't answer. Well, my dear, I said sarcastically with all the strength I could muster. Since you have a lover, let me make the decision for you. I'm going to file for divorce. Sophia looked stunned. No, I don't want a divorce. I just want to get away from everything for a while. You, the kids, and work, just for a week or two. And I haven't had sex with him yet. You're lying. I can tell by the look on your face. You can't even look me in the eye. I felt a surge of anger come over me. I'm only going to say this once. Don't do this, and maybe we can still save our marriage. Even though you've already betrayed me. It's too late. I've already made the arrangements. I promised him he'd pick me up in an hour. What about the oath you made to me of eternal fidelity? She didn't answer. I stopped talking and went upstairs to pack some clothes. I kissed each of the kids and then made my way downstairs to my car in about 5 minutes with Sophia right behind me. Where are you going? Didn't we agree you'd stay and watch the kids? She asked in a panic. Those were your words, not mine. Now they're your problems, not mine. I put my bags in the trunk. You can't just leave. Who's going to take care of the kids? Bring them on, huh? Show them what their mother is really like. See if your boyfriend likes taking care of your kids. I started the car. When are you coming back? Sophia's eye makeup was smudged from tears. I didn't answer and just drove off. I drove to the end of the block, turned right, and stopped to wait to see who would drive up to my house. Not long after, I saw a silver Porsche pull up in front of my house. A silver-haired man gets out of the car, apparently Sophia's lover. I watched Sophia come out. I couldn't hear their conversation, but it was obvious they were arguing. Then my youngest came out, followed by the other two. The man looked at them and shook his head. Sophia tries to kiss him, but he dodges and gets back in the car and speeds off. I didn't recognize the man, and I guess he didn't know me or what my car looked like, so I followed. He drove for a few miles and finally stopped in front of a restaurant. His license plate says his last name, Brown, 35. That's pretty stupid if you're trying to screw around with someone and still want to remain anonymous. I thought to myself, but I've known his name for a long time. In fact, I know almost everything about him except what he looks like. He's 52 years old, twice divorced, in arrears on child support, and has a pacemaker. He walks into the restaurant and I follow close behind. As we both stood in the line waiting to be seated, I turned on the recording app on my phone and whispered in his ear, "Excuse me, Mr. Brown." He seemed startled. "You know me? Do I know you?" "I'm Sophia's husband." "Whose husband?" he said, feigning ignorance. I ignored his pretense. He was at least 3 inches taller than I was, and much stockier. He puffed out his chest and laughed at me, poking me heavily in the chest with his index finger. "Don't act like a tough guy. You're just an accountant doing the books." He scoffed. "How long have you and Sophia been together?" I asked directly. "I've been intimate with your wife for 2 years now, Four Eyes." He glared at me. "What are you going to do about it?" "Four-eyed boy? Is that the best insult you can come up with? Are you still stuck at the middle school level?" His face instantly turned red, clearly stung by my words. "You have a pacemaker, so I'm not going to hit you. If I did hit you, you'd probably have a heart attack and I'd be charged with assault and battery. While I can live with the consequences of that, you might not survive it." Those words seemed to take the edge off his temper. "Besides, you're right, I'm not a tough guy. But some of my accounting clients in South Philly are no slouches. They own dry cleaners, so they're good at money laundering. They're loan sharks, and they come down hard on people who are late on their payments. You could call them money-lending sharks. They rely on me to help them avoid prison. If you ever talk to my wife again, get close to her, or even answer her phone, I'll ask them for a small favor and break your legs. If I were you, I'd black out her phone number immediately. Do I make myself clear?" I watched the blood fade from his face momentarily before he turned away. I turned off my cell phone, drove to a nearby mountain, rented ski gear, and relaxed. It really helped me to relieve the stress. I called my attorney and started the divorce process. I was there for almost a week and never contacted Sophia. Then I picked up the divorce papers before heading home. When I got home, Sophia looked as if she had aged 5 years at once. The house was a mess. My youngest son ran up to me crying, wearing dirty, smelly clothes. I tried to pick him up, but he was already too heavy. So we sat together on the couch, after I pushed the week's pile of newspapers onto the floor. I held him tightly for a few minutes and then told him to go to his room. I turned to Sophia. So how was your time with your lover, Mr. Brown? How did you get his name? I'm not as stupid as you think I am. Aren't you afraid of giving him a heart attack? He's fitted with a pacemaker. The words about the pacemaker clearly shocked her. I didn't go. I had to take care of the kids. What did he say? I couldn't help but give a small, mocking smile. Oh, he was very understanding. I could tell she was lying. I grabbed her cell phone off the coffee table and flipped to Brown's number. I turned on the speakerphone and dialed, realizing that he'd already blacked out Sophia's number as I'd suggested. I also found out that Sophia sent 5 text messages to Brown pleading with him to contact her, but none of them were sent successfully. Looks like your test drive didn't go too well, I said. She broke down and began to cry bitterly. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I don't love him. It was just sex. You're the only one I love. That means nothing to me. So that's why you slept with him? She sat down silently and continued to cry. How can I make amends? How about not fighting me on the divorce? Sophia goes from a pleading stance to aggressive in an instant, just like her boyfriend's Porsche, which accelerates from 0 to 60 miles in 2.5 seconds. If we can't work this out, I'll leave you with nothing. Pun intended. Get it? I'll take all your possessions and bankrupt you to the point where you're living in your car while paying me alimony. I couldn't help but laugh. There are a lot of things to dislike about Pennsylvania. It's too cold in the winter, too hot in the summer, and traffic is congested as hell. But there is one good thing about Pennsylvania. Since I have proof that you're having an affair, I don't have to pay you any alimony. Not a dime. It's a good thing we don't live in New Jersey anymore. When she heard that, she sucked in such a sharp breath that I thought she was going to have a heart attack. Why don't you move out of this house and move in with your lover? Oh, I forgot. After you abandoned your family, your boyfriend abandoned you. What a shame. He has such a beautiful Porsche, and honestly, his house is a mansion. Much nicer than this home. But now you can't live anywhere. The ensuing divorce process was fraught with strife and animosity and lasted for some time. Finally, the court ruled that I get the right to live in the house until the kids are 18. At that point, we will sell the house and split the proceeds equally. I was also granted full custody of the children, as I had been their primary caregiver for many years. Sophia is required to pay me child support and a small amount of alimony. I don't really care about the exact amount. I just want to feel some psychological revenge every month when she writes me a check. For the 2 years that the divorce was official, Sophia would come to see the children for a few hours a month. I haven't met anyone new yet, but have lost 10 pounds, mostly because of my terrible cooking. The good thing is that the city center is dotted with all kinds of delicious restaurants, which is why we didn't starve to death. I had a great time with the kids. The oldest son attends Penn State. On weekends, I'd take the younger kids to museums, play tennis, swim at the YMCA, or take a bike ride down East River Drive. While I didn't win the lottery, Sophia won almost $100,000 in the lottery. Along comes a handsome 25-year-old fitness instructor who keeps Sophia smiling for an entire month. The good times didn't last long, however, as the young man soon disappeared, taking all her lottery winnings and savings with him. As an accountant, I am not an expert on karma or cosmic justice. But over the years, I've noticed that the advice my father gave me when I graduated from college was 100% correct. He cautioned me to stay honest because in the long run, the probability that honest people will end up much better off than liars and thieves is about 90%. Watching what happened to Sophia, I couldn't help but feel the drama of fate. Once, everything we built together fell apart in her betrayal. And now she's lost her windfall fortune by trusting the wrong people. It all seems like an ironic cycle that makes you think about the importance of integrity and choice. Despite all that I've been through, I don't feel like gloating. Instead, I feel bad for our kids. They have had to witness the breakdown of their parents' marriage and now watch their mother suffer deception and betrayal. This made me even more determined to create a stable, loving environment for my children. I have also experienced a lot of self-reflection during this time. I began to wonder if there was anything I could have done better that would have prevented our marriage from going this far. But eventually, I realized that relationships are a mutual thing, and you can't unilaterally take all the blame. I began to re-examine my life. While my job may not be the most exciting, it provides stability for me and my children. I started focusing more on my hobbies and trying new things. I started learning to cook, and although it was slow going, the kids seemed to appreciate my efforts. I also started to get more involved in the community. I joined a support group for single fathers where I not only received valuable advice, but also offered support to other fathers in similar situations. This mutual support made me feel like I wasn't alone and gave me more confidence to face my role as a single father. As time went on, my children and I became closer. We started to have our own traditions, like a movie night every Sunday night or a monthly camping trip. Watching my children grow and adapt to the changes in this new family dynamic has made me incredibly proud. As for Sophia, despite the past hurts between us, we gradually learned how to get along in a civilized, mature way for the sake of our children. We may no longer be husband and wife, but we will always be parents to our children. This realization helps us to remain rational and cooperative in dealing with our children. Looking back on this experience, I realize that life often doesn't go the way we plan, but it's the surprises and challenges that shape our character and teach us valuable lessons. I learned to forgive, not only Sophia, but myself. I've learned that maintaining honesty and integrity isn't just about avoiding harm, it's about inner peace and self-respect. Now, as I stand on the streets of Philadelphia and look around at the bustling crowds, I feel a sense of freedom and peace that I have never felt before. I don't know what the future will bring, but I do know that whatever happens, I am capable of facing it, adapting, and growing. My father's advice, that honest people are ultimately better off, was more than a simple moral admonition. It is a philosophy of life, an attitude towards the world. Through this experience, I have come to understand this more deeply. Honesty may not bring immediate rewards, but in the long run it will bring more peace, respect, and true happiness into our lives. When I look at my kids, I want to be able to pass that lesson on to them, not through preaching, but through my actions and choices. I want them to grow up to be honest, decent people, not out of fear of punishment, but because they understand the intrinsic value of doing so. Life continues to move forward in my kids, and I continue to grow in the process. Our story continues, full of challenges, but also full of hope and possibilities. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I do know that as long as we remain honest and courageous, we can face any challenge. This is my story, a story of betrayal, loss, rebirth, and hope. It may not be a perfect fairy tale, but it's real. And in this true story, I found my happiness and peace. This is perhaps life's greatest triumph. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.